Hello and welcome to another CTE update, and this is because we've had patch 43. Now patch 43 is primarily about weapon balancing. It's the second pass at their current balancing attempt. There are some other changes in this update, but they're pretty minor. Now I'm not going to go through every piece of the patch notes in detail. You can read them on the screen, or there is going to be a link in the description to the patch notes on Reddit. What I am going to do is go through them in general and tell you what effect they're having and how they're going to influence the game. So I'm going to start with the non-balance changes, and what we have here is some weapon updates, mainly for the new guns. They fixed out most of their animations and their reload time so they all match together, and they fixed up the sounds. The AN-94 had a problem of not having any sounds. The Mare's Leg was actually using sounds from different guns. Now they've got their own sounds and the animations match up. They've also fixed the tracers on LMGs so that they now look better and don't overlap the gun model. And they made some changes to Gunmaster. They've added a few toys to some of the guns, and they've changed the order of the guns in the standard list. So what they did is they reversed the standard list, which meant the pistols were at the end of the list, not the start. So you start with the good guns, end up with the pistols, but that moved the L96A1 and the Deagle to the beginning of the list. So they've reshuffled those further down the list so you don't start with a pistol and a sniper rifle. On servers running the DLC weapon list, these are now grouped by DLC, so you'll actually move through the DLCs as you advance through the list. And remember, this DLC list is going to be available to anybody, even if they don't have the DLCs or premium, so you can play with guns that you don't actually have access to in the main game. And we have a few bug fixes. Now a couple of these actually do affect the way the game plays. So you cannot defib the driver of a tank through the side of the tank anymore, but you can defib the drivers of jeeps and motorbikes while they're going past. And they fixed the ground in a few places on road transmission. So if you've seen the community map project video, you'll know that the ground is actually smooth with a grid on it. And that's the actual ground your grenade explodes on. Over the top is then like a skin with all the little bushes and dirt roads and all that kind of stuff. So in a few places on road transmission, that layer underneath in which the grenades actually hit wasn't right. And that brings us on to the weapon balance changes. Like I say, I'm not going to go through every one of these in detail because there are 8 pages of these and it would take me a couple of minutes a page, I think. So instead I'm going to go through them in general. So first up is the DMRs, where they've decreased their spread. When they did the last update it was a bit severe, now they've toned it back a bit. Specifically for the SKS, which has been toned down quite a lot. Still worse than the others, but it's a lot better. A lot of guns have had their bullet velocities increased. This is everything from PDWs to sniper rifles. The reason for this is when they change their effective ranges, well, the bullets need to get to that effective range pretty much the same rate as they used to. So a lot of the guns have had their bullet velocities increased. The MTAR and the M4 have had their bullet velocities decreased. That's because they're not designed to be long range options. The AWS and the LSAT have had their recoil tweaked. Doesn't say how they've had it tweaked, but I'm guessing it's to bring them more in line in that mid position between the assault rifles and the belt-fed LMGs. So I'll have to work out whether they're now slightly better or slightly worse, but they are going to be slap bang in the middle. The bullet model for the AWS has also changed from assault rifle to LMG. It's still going to shoot the same, but what it will do now is suppress as an LMG. Now they've fixed every reload animation in the game, so all the automatic weapons will now reload properly. So that means when the animation is finished on screen, it will have actually reloaded. They've also fixed the reload threshold, well, fudged the reload threshold. Every gun has 2 reload times, but only 1 reload threshold, and originally it was set to the long reload time. So if you were doing a tactical reload with rounds left, and cancelled out of that reload before the time that was for the full reload, that's what gave you the fake reload where you didn't get the bullets. What they've done to fudge it is make that reload threshold the short reload time. So hopefully you won't get fake reloads anymore. And they've slightly increased the range that the FYJS can get a one-shot headshot kill. And on to the next page, and I'll warn you, there's one change on here that makes me go mad. Can you spot it? I'm sure you will. Right, so the gravity has been reduced on a couple of the rifles, the CS5 and the SKS. This is so they end up with a flatter trajectory. Now the change that makes my blood boil. Corrections to the calibre of the L96A1. It's been changed from a 7.62 bolt to a 338 Magnum. Now the L96A1 has always been a bit of a bugbear for me because this is a very old gun that's not in active service anymore, but they model it as the British Army sniper rifle. Now what they've done is changed its calibre. Now the L96A1 as it was in service was a 7.62 NATO round, so that's a .308 Winchester for you Americans. What they've done is now made it a 338 Magnum, but that's not the L96A1. They've also reduced its magazine size down to 5. That's not an L96A1. What that gun is an L115A1, which was the replacement of the L96A1. They're modelling two completely different guns. They've got the graphics and the name of one gun, but they're giving it the stats of another gun and calling it corrections. No, what they've done is mixed two completely different guns together. They have made some other corrections which do appear to be corrections, though I'm not entirely sure. Most of them have got less ammunition than they used to have, although the Scout Elite has gone up to a magazine size of 10. They've also adjusted a few of the guns so they've now got 2 round bursts instead of 3 round bursts, but I don't think they're going to be AN94 style 2 round bursts. They've adjusted some of the bolt action times, so the Scout Elite and the FYJS have had their bolt action time increased, so that's the amount of time it takes to cycle the next round in, and the delay has been standardised on a few of the guns, so some of them it was a bit quick, some of them it was a bit slow. They've increased the number of magazines on some of the heavier rounded guns. Not quite sure why, but I think it's just to give everybody the same amount of ammunition, whereas before it was more done on your damage potential. The Scout Elite and the FYJS now have a bit more ammunition as well, but the larger calibre snipers now have a bit less. The rate of fire of the SR338 has been increased to 200 rounds per minute. There's no burst fire on the MTAR anymore because it shouldn't have one. Semi-auto has been added to the LSAT because it should have one. And burst fire has been added to the RPK-12 and the QBB-95 because they should have those. Next we get on to one of the biggest changes in this patch, and it's for shotguns. So it's not just this change here, there are a few more changes on the next page, but essentially what they've done is taken shotguns and made the damage more reliable. They've done this by increasing the number of pellets in each shot, but reducing the damage of each pellet. They've also made the cone of fire more consistent. So for buckshot it's now a 2.4 degree cone, and for flechette it's now a 2 degree cone. And that cone doesn't change when you're firing. So firing fast doesn't affect how that cone spreads. The spread of a shotgun will now always be the same. So a flechette dart will now do 8.4 maximum damage down to 4.2 minimum damage. Buckshot will do 11.2 maximum damage down to 5.6 minimum damage. The flechette and buckshot damage drop off has improved 25 to 50 metres, and this has been done to balance out the fact that shotguns now have that tighter cone of fire. So it's harder to hit, but they hit just as hard when you do. So this means that shotguns should much more reliably do damage where you're pointing them, which can't be a bad thing. And there have been a few other changes to shotguns. So the slug rounds now do slightly more damage and their drop off has been increased. The frag rounds do slightly more damage for both pump and non-pump versions. And the shotgun chokes have been nerfed really, because they've got a tighter spread anyway, the shotguns, so the chokes don't really need to do as much work as they did before, and they don't want the shotguns to be more accurate on the move than while you're standing still. And we're on to the final page. So the Shorty now acts like it has an ergo grip, and they've reduced the headshot multiplier of DMRs back down to 2. So this doesn't stop you getting 2-shot kills with the DMR if you get a headshot. What it does is decrease the range at which you can do that. And there have been a few zeroing adjustments for the head glitch fix. So if you don't know what this is, they've tried fixing head glitching. What happens now is the bullets come from a more realistic position on the gun, not from the player. But this means that you can get behind cover and often shoot actually into the cover. To make this happen less often, what they've done is adjusted a lot of the scopes. So instead of being zeroed for 0 meters, they're zeroed slightly further out. This means that the dot is actually aiming you slightly higher, so you're not going to shoot into the cover. And finally, something I don't understand, but I guess must be for consoles. They've reduced the trigger pull weight on some guns so they work properly on worn controllers. Okay, if they say so. And that's it for patch 43, so I don't think there's anything world shattering in those patch changes, but there are some nice tweaks to weapons, especially the shotguns, which I think have been a bit neglected in the past. Now we have had the first major patch to Hardline, and I will cover it, but first I'm going to go out, play it and test it, see if it's actually changed the game. It would take a lot to change my opinion of that game, but it's a Battlefield game, so I'm going to do it. Anyway, that's it for this CTE update. Thanks for watching.